Picture this. Me, Reese Witherspoon, in London, ordering fish and chips so often they might start wrapping me in paper. I'm traveling with my Wells Fargo Autograph Journey card, so I earn rewards wherever I book travel. 5 times points with hotels, 4 times with airlines, 3 times on restaurants and other travel, and 1 point on other purchases. Imagine getting rewarded for eating a toad in the hole. Wait, what is a toad in a hole?
Visit wellsfargo.com/autograph journey. Terms apply.
Starting a business can seem like a daunting task, unless you have a partner like Shopify. They have the tools you need to start and grow your business. From designing a website to marketing to selling and beyond, Shopify can help with everything you need. There's a reason millions of companies like Mattel, Heinz, and Allbirds continue to trust and use them. With Shopify on your side, turn your big business idea into... Sign up for your $1 per month trial at shopify.com/special offer.
The Roger Stone Show on the Red Apple Podcast Network.
Welcome back to the Roger Stone Show. There's an election in Colombia today. They have kind of a 2-step process like many countries. It is a democracy. It's not a parliamentary system, but in their first election, if no candidate gets 50%, the top 2 vote getters then face off in a runoff. And out of the blue, an independent candidate who is pro-free enterprise, pro-freedom, pro-Trump, pro-America has emerged as a phenomenon. I will mispronounce his name because my command of Spanish is not that great, but Abelardo la Espriella, I'm sure I mangled that, has come out of nowhere. My next guest, Shane Trejo, has written, as Colombians prepare to cast their votes today, one figure towers over the campaign trail like a force of nature. Espriella, the combative lawyer and businessman known throughout the country as El Tigre, surging in the final polls to within striking distance of the leftist frontrunner, the outsider candidate is drawing massive crowds that roar his slogan, Firme por la Patria, while men in tiger costumes chant and fireworks explode behind bulletproof glass. He is the candidate the left and the entrenched, corrupt conservative in the country fear most because he refuses to play by the rules of the old political establishment. A self-funded movement leader who skipped the old party primaries, De La Espriella, offers something rare in Colombian politics, an unapologetic repudiation of the failed status quo and the past. He is a natural phenomena. Joining me now is Shane Trejo, writes for the Popular Sentinel, a very keen observer of politics in both South and Central America. He was the first person to point out to me the outrageousness of the framing of Honduran President Juan Orlando Hernandez, who was framed by the Biden Justice Department as a narco-terrorist, despite any evidence to the contrary. There's a great 7-part series posted at artvoice.com, a 7-part series completely destroying that phony prosecution. It was also Shane Trejo who told me that Papi Asfura, the pro-American candidate, would win in Honduras on a Sunday if Hernandez was rightfully pardoned on a Friday. Shane turned out to be right about both of those things, and I want him to join us now. He speaks of this candidate in Colombia as someone who is channeling the policies of Milei in Argentina, Bukele in El Salvador, and yes, Donald Trump himself. So, Shane, welcome to the Stone Zone here in the Roger Stone Show. What's going on the ground right now in Colombia?
Thanks for having me on again, Roger. So today the presidential election is happening. Abelardo de la Espriella is the populist candidate there. He's kind of in the same vein as a Javier Milei or Nayib Bukele. He's vowing to bring back law and order, and he's an outsider. He's not beholden to the political establishment, and he's been surging in the polls in recent weeks, and it's looking like he's going to go to a runoff election with Ivan Cepeda, who is the far left candidate. So it's going to be likely going to be a runoff election between those two, with Espriella being the populist conservative, Cepeda being the far left communist, and that's going to be the showdown to see if Colombia can join so many other countries like El Salvador and Argentina, and more recently Honduras, Chile, and Ecuador as countries that have rejected communism and gotten on board with the momentum to make the Americas great again. So there's a great amount of hope that's building in Colombia right now, and it's something that every MAGA supporter, every patriot in America should be looking at, because it's going to have huge ramifications on stopping narco-terrorism, stopping the flow of drugs, stopping migrants from coming up at the border. So we should all be praying for La Espriella to win and be able to create that relationship with President Trump to help the Monroe Doctrine take hold throughout the hemisphere.
Yeah, this election seems to me to be much larger than Colombia alone. It's a hemispheric test of whether Latin America will continue its drift towards ideological experiments that weaken sovereignty and empower the criminal empires and the narco-traffickers, or finally rejects them by electing a leader with the force of personality to stop them dead in their tracks. De La Espriella's leadership abilities lie in the characteristics he shares with the most influential leaders across the Americas. He wields Trump's nationalist directness, his contempt for elite gatekeepers, and fearless naming of enemies, whether it is leftist ideologues, narco-criminal networks, or the incestuous political class. He channels Bukele's uncompromising insistence that public order is a precondition for liberty, the simple freedom to leave home, to run a business, send children to school, return home with your family safe and sound at the end of the day. And as you've pointed out, he carries Milei's ferocious attack on socialist bureaucracy and market-hostile policies that punish productive citizens. So for De La Espriella, security, sovereignty, economic stagnation are not separate issues, but one interconnected crisis manufactured by decades of elitist and institutional failure. We'll discuss all of this going on today. It is so one thing I can tell you absolutely certain. I spoke to Senator Bernie Moreno of Ohio, who's been sent as an election observer. He's on the ground now in Colombia. His job is to make sure that the election is free, fair, and honest. But at the same time, just in terms of his non-official capacity, he sees this same surge that you see. This guy was virtually unknown a couple of days ago. Now, the left has tried desperately in recent days to discredit him, claiming that Abelardo de Espriella was somehow connected to Alex Saab, who, of course, was the money man for the Venezuelan machine. It is true that as an attorney, Abelardo did represent Saab, but it is also true that he broke with him when he learned of his activities, and he urged Saab to turn himself over to U.S. authorities and essentially surrender for prosecution. So that smear, which is really being cranked up by the lunatics at The Guardian, by folks, just so you know, The Guardian, which is a British publication, not a word printed there is true or accurate. The Guardian is not a journalistic enterprise or a news organization. It's a propaganda front for Marxists, drug addicts, and other losers. If you read it there, there's a 99% chance that what you're reading is systematically false. But just the fact that they've cranked out this attack on Espriella is further proof that they fear that he is surging in the polls.
Absolutely. Every time that there's a leader that emerges, not just in Latin America, but throughout the entire world, as we saw with President Trump, they want to attack him, they'll come up with any smear, any falsehood, that if it has a grain of truth or not, they'll run with it and do everything they can to try to destroy that person, particularly because, in this case, in Colombia, under current president Gustavo Petro, he's extremely progressive, far leftist. He's put in policies called, quote-unquote, total peace, but it's really total appeasement. Appeasement with the narco-terrorists, negotiating with them instead of crushing them and putting them down. And that's just allowed them more room to breathe. They've been able to regroup. They've been able to bolster their power. Petro's also crippled the military's ability to be able to stop violent gangs from operating on the streets. So Colombians are reporting that security conditions are severely worsening. The crime's going way up. Petro may not have created these criminal groups, but he's empowering them with his weak on crime policies. And Cepeda, who is likely going to be going up against La Espriella in the after the elections today in the runoffs, he's just going to be a continuation of Petro's policies. He's been in Congress for decades, career politician, and has been an outspoken advocate of socialism and leftism, and he's planning to double down on the quote-unquote total peace policy. So the country really hangs in the balance right now, and La Espriella is giving the Colombian people hope. It's been on just a downturn, ever since they signed a 2016 peace accord with the Revolutionary Armed Forces of Colombia. The idea that it would, bring peace, but it's just created more strife, more violence, empowering these radical groups that are getting drug money and helping to facilitate narco-terrorism in Colombia and around the globe. So this is a huge contest that's happening right now. President Trump's shown that we need to be very concerned with everything that's going on, particularly in our hemisphere, because it's all connected. And Colombia is going to be a huge test. If Colombia goes conservative, if it goes populist, as it's looking like it very well may, this could be, maybe the final domino to fall till we eradicate communism in the entire hemisphere, and it's going to have huge impacts on President Trump's legacy and the Monroe Doctrine, keeping China out of these countries. So the ramifications are massive for MAGA.
All right, we're talking to Shane Trejo, who writes for a number of publications, including the Populist Sentinel, and who's a keen observer of the freedom movements across Latin and Central America. When we get back, we're going to touch on Honduras, but I also want to talk about Guatemala for a moment, because there's some nefarious things going on there as well. You're listening to the Stone Zone right here on The Roger Stone Show, and we'll be right back.
This episode is brought to you by Netflix. The Four Seasons is back for season 2, starring Tina Fey, Will Forte, Coleman Domingo, Marco Calvani, Carrie Kenny Silver, and Erica Henningsen. After a difficult year, your favorite group of friends continues their tradition of vacationing together, now with a baby in tow. From the Jersey Shore to upstate New York and Italy, their getaways are sure to take unexpected turns where comedy ensues. Watch The Four Seasons, now streaming only on Netflix.
Welcome back in the Stone Zone here on the Roger Stone Show. We're talking about Latin American politics. I have written extensively in the past about Guatemala. During the Biden administration, they were actually actively trafficking drugs through the U.S. Embassy in Guatemala. And unfortunately, we fired the holdover Biden ambassador, but left everybody else in place. That's kind of like changing the pins on the dirty diapers, but leaving the diapers on the baby. There's continued corruption in the U.S. Embassy in Guatemala. And the current designated U.S. ambassador to Guatemala, one Juan Rodriguez, is a Florida attorney, continues to tell people both in the United States and in Guatemala that the president is and the administration is supporting the presidential candidacy of one Oscar Rodolfo Castaneda. There's only one minor problem. I spoke to Secretary of State Marco Rubio, also talked to the guy at the desk for the NSC for this region. That's simply and completely untrue. Now, the fact that Castaneda happens to be a close associate, as is Juan Rodriguez, to the political consultant of Dick Morris, I find that curious. Unfortunately for Rodriguez, he's not confirmed by the U.S. Senate. I spoke to 3 U.S. senators the last 10 days who will now move to vote against his confirmation if it comes to the floor based on this insider dealing and corruption. Guatemala is a place where this same revolution we're talking about that's happening in Colombia could also take place. You could, under their system, elect a pro-freedom, anti-narco, anti-Marxist government, but it's not going to happen under these people. I guess the other thing I want to touch on before we go here is really to thank you, Shane, for being the one who brought my attention to the case of Juan Orlando Hernandez, who was the first president of the Honduras to sign an extradition treaty and to work closely with the United States on drug interdiction and ending the flow of the narcos from Honduras to the United States. He, in turn, extradited the 2 biggest murderers and narco-traffickers in the country. They went to trial under President Donald Trump. They were convicted in the Southern District of New York. And then, lo and behold, they were released from prison in return for their false testimony against President Hernandez, claiming without any other evidence whatsoever that he was involved in drug trafficking. One of the great frame jobs of all time. President Donald Trump had the courage to see through this canard. They tried to do to Trump exactly what they did successfully do to Hernandez, and justice has been served in this case with a full and complete and unconditional pardon. So for those leftists out there who say, oh, there's hypocrisy, you arrested and you're prosecuting Maduro at the same time you pardoned Hernandez, that's apples and oranges, folks. There's a 7-part series at artvoice.com which absolutely proves the case against Hernandez was a fraud from day one. It was Shane Trejo, who was the American journalist, who brought this to my attention. And yes, I brought it to the president's attention. By the way, if there's any question, neither Shane Trejo nor Roger Stone were paid a single penny for our advocacy for a pardon for Juan Orlando Hernandez. If you got 46 seconds to wrap this up, Shane, your move.
Thank you, Roger. Yeah, the Juan Orlando Hernandez case was the Biden administration cutting deals with far-left communists down in Honduras to attack Hernandez, who was a Trump ally, and bring in a regime that had all this woke things that they were placating to, but then just went completely off the rails and almost destroyed the country. But it's bounced back, and I'm proud that we were able to do what we did journalistically, and President Trump did the right thing, and now hopefully Honduras is made great again quickly.
All right, there we have it. I want to thank my guest, Shane Trejo. We'll be right back.
Thanks for listening to The Roger Stone Show. You can hear The Roger Stone Show Sunday afternoons at 3. If you like the podcast, share it with your friends and listen anytime at WABCRadio.com and download the WABC Radio app. Hit that subscribe button on all major podcast platforms. Plus, follow WABC on social on Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, and X. See you next time for a new episode so you never have to wonder.
What the heck is going on here?